Dave Thompson wasn't exactly what you'd call a romantic. At 32, his most significant relationship was with his gaming console, and his idea of a night out was ordering takeout from a new place while binge-watching shows. But even Dave knew he couldn't sustain himself on instant noodles and pizza forever. So, one fateful Saturday, he found himself in the local supermarket, armed with a list that his well-meaning friend, Julia, had written for him. Real food, Dave. Not just chips. Dave wandered the aisles with the determination of a man on a mission. He was eyeing a suspicious-looking bag of quinoa when he heard a voice behind him. "Excuse me, sir. Do you know where I can find the, fancy olives?" Dave turned around to see a woman who looked equally lost. She had curly hair that seemed to be trying to escape her head, bright red glasses that didn't quite sit straight, and a striped sweater that made her look like a colorful zebra. She was holding a shopping basket with nothing but a single carrot in it. "Fancy olives?" Dave repeated, looking around as if the olives might suddenly jump out and announce themselves. "Yeah, the ones that come in those tiny jars and are, ridiculously overpriced," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. "I need them to impress my cat. She's very judgmental." Dave blinked. "Right. Of course. Cats love the fancy olives." "Absolutely," she nodded, deadpan. "It's part of her gourmet diet." Dave couldn't help but chuckle. "Well, let's see if we can't find the olives that are feline approved." The two set off on an impromptu scavenger hunt, wandering through aisles with no clear direction. They passed the dairy section, a kid throwing a tantrum over the wrong cereal, and a display of canned beans that seemed to go on forever. By the time they reached aisle 7, they were laughing like old friends. "Look, here we go," Dave exclaimed, pointing to a shelf of small jars filled with various types of olives. Fancy olives in all their overpriced glory. You've saved the day," she said dramatically, grabbing a jar of green olives stuffed with garlic. "Cleo will be so pleased." Dave raised an eyebrow. "Cleo? That's your cat." "No," she grinned. "That's my grandmother. I just like to keep people on their toes." Dave burst out laughing. "I'm Dave, by the way." "Sophie," she replied, extending her hand. They shook hands right there in aisle 7, surrounded by jars of olives. They chatted for a bit, and it turned out Sophie was just as hopeless in the kitchen as Dave. She was planning a dinner party for her friends and had been wandering the supermarket for an hour, hoping inspiration would strike. Dave admitted he was trying to upgrade his diet but had no idea where to start. "Well, how about this?" Sophie suggested, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "We team up. We'll make a dinner so epic, your friend and my Cleo will be blown away." Dave hesitated for a moment, but he was already enjoying Sophie's quirky company. "All right," he agreed, "but you have to promise not to judge me if I burn the water." "Deal," Sophie laughed. And so, they embarked on a grand culinary adventure. Their combined knowledge of cooking was laughable, but their enthusiasm was unmatched. They filled their carts with an odd assortment of ingredients: pasta, tomatoes, 5 different kinds of cheese, just in case, Sophie insisted, and an alarming amount of garlic. At one point, they ended up in a heated debate over which vegetable was the least terrifying. Back at Dave's tiny apartment, the cooking commenced. It was chaos. Sophie accidentally set a dish towel on fire, and Dave dropped a whole jar of marinara sauce on the floor, creating what could only be described as a crime scene in the kitchen. But they were having a blast. They chopped, stirred, and taste tested, often the wrong things, laughing at their own ineptitude. "Okay, this might be the worst meal ever," Dave said as they stood over a pot of boiling pasta that was more like a mushy blob. Sophie shrugged. "Or it might be the start of a new food revolution, disaster cuisine." By the time they finally sat down to eat, The kitchen looked like it had survived a food fight, and their epic dinner resembled something out of a post-apocalyptic cookbook.